Hello again, friends. Thank you for joining me. And we've got some whiskeys today that are sure to be of interest to some of you, just based on how much attention these get online. So we're going to get into it. I've got two to taste today. This is the Rock Hill Farms, and this is the Hancock'S Presence Reserve. Now, what these two share in common is that they're both distilled at the Buffalo Trace Distillery. However, these brands are not owned by Buffalo Trace. So some of you folks who pay attention to Blanton's, among others, might know that back in the 80s and 90s, Age International was the company that owned the Buffalo Trace Distillery. They, via a series of transactions, got sold to a Japanese company called Takara Shuzo, which continues to own all these brands today. So you've got Ancient Age, for which the original company was named, got Blanton's, and you've got these two, Rock Hill Farms, and you've got this Hancock'S Presence Reserve, in addition to Elmer T. Lee. And so while Buffalo Trace distills these whiskeys and has the domestic distribution rights to them, they don't actually own these brands. So they sit in this kind of weird, uncomfortable place in the Sazerac and Buffalo Trace portfolios. But these come from Buffalo Trace Mash Bill number 2, which is said to be higher in rye. So that's a 12 to 15% reputed rye mash bill. We don't know the exact numbers, but these are interesting because you don't see them around a lot. And when you do see them around, they've started to become marked up to those kind of crazy levels that we've seen with some bottles of Blanton's, with Elmer T. Lee, with all the rest of the Buffalo Trace whiskeys. Frankly, it's really incredible that these are both $50 suggested retail price, and I've seen, if you go on Instagram and look at some of the overpriced bourbon accounts, they will show you pictures of these on the shelf with a $400 price tag. So I don't know what these are worth. I'm pretty sure it's not $400, but we'll see. I'm just going to get into these. This is my literal first impression. I've just poured these out. I'm just going to have a sniff and a tiny sip, and I've even given myself a really, really tiny little pour there. You don't need much, and when you got two of them to review, it's best to take it nice and easy. So I'm going to start off with the color there. I don't know if you can tell, it looks a little dark on the screen relative to what I'm seeing, but it's a really cheery kind of medium dark maize, or like a nice bright gold. This is interesting. Got some got like a very butterscotchy nose. So I'm going to start here with the Rock Hill Farms. So as I said, this is $50 SRP. Comes to us at 100 proof and is a single barrel. But I inquired with Buffalo Trace. I said, is this a specific warehouse, or does this come from anywhere in particular in the way that Blanton's comes from Warehouse H? And they said no, this is from all around. So these were both launched in 1985, which is the year after Blanton's was launched. And clearly the single barrel format was getting some initial success because they thought, well, why don't we have 3 different ones? Yeah, there's a lot of like a banana taffy in here. A lot of round woodiness, kind of. There's almost like a corniness to this too. It's got like that really, really rich kind of buttery corniness, but yeah, this is interesting. This smells about like what you might expect a better batch of Blanton's or a single barrel of Blanton's to smell like. I'll put that down for a second, just give my nose a rest. So, the thing I talk about in the accompanying article, which if you haven't seen it is available at www.malt-review.com, is that you get the sense that a lot of these are just being snapped up by people who see other folks paying way over the money for Blanton's and think, well, shoot, if they like Blanton's, they'll like this because it's the same mash bill and single barrel and distilled at the same distillery, and maybe somebody willing to pay $400 for Blanton's will pay $400 for Rock Hill Farms. It's kind of crazy, but so this is the Hancock'S Presence Reserve. Is interesting. It's a lot different aromatically. I'm getting like more of a, there's kind of a it's not like a young woodiness, but there's more of a forest aspect to this, like maybe some pine trees. There's a great, like a really ripe fruity note. So I'm getting like a really ripe, like a honeydew melon, perhaps. So the weird thing about Hancock'S Presence Reserve, which is named for an early settler in the banks of the Kentucky River in a place called Leestown, named Hancock Lee. But the interesting thing about this is it comes to us at this very odd proof. It comes to us at 88.9 proof. And I actually asked Buffalo Trace about this. I said, what was the history behind that? Or what was the reason? They responded, unknown. Just no idea, but there it is. But I'll tell you what, that relative dilution is opening up a lot more aromatics. Whereas the prior one was all very kind of one note and, you know, a little bit, had a little overbearing wood influence. It was, this one is a lot more diverse. There's some really pretty scents in this too. There's some really nice floral scents, like fresh springtime flowers. Some lime and peppermint in there. Yeah, so just on nose alone, I mean, they're both interesting, and like I said, they both smell a lot better than recent examples of blends I've had, and a lot more interesting. But between the two, I'm currently favoring the Hancock'S President's Reserve. But let's go back to the Rock Hills Farm and give this a taste. Actually, you know what? I have just decided that I'm going to taste the lower proof one first, which is generally good practice. So back to the Hancock'S President's Reserve here. Yeah, as you know, I like to. Speaking of Buffalo Trace, Freddie Johnson, who's a phenomenal wealth of information and insight, had pointed me towards this tasting technique where I just let it sit on the lips, and indeed there's this little kiss of like those cellophane wrapped fruity hard candies that had the kind of like silvery colored wrapping. If you know those. Yeah, that's there. I'm going to take a proper sip of this now and kind of let it coat all the surfaces of the mouth and just see how I feel about it. Yeah, so it is very fruity. It's very bright throughout. I mean, it's got like you've got all the ripe citrusy sweet fruit flavors here that you might associate with like even an Irish whiskey, that style. So there's a little bit of dry kind of limestone on the finish, but really is just that super charming, super pleasant fruitiness. Going back to the Rock Hill Farms, gonna. So this is very much the other end of the spectrum. It would almost be interesting to have a blend of these because I think in combination they might be more complete than in isolation. So this is, as I said, it's 50% ABV, 100 proof. You can sense that right away in the mouth. There's more of that radiant heat, and then you've also got. Very round, very polished, very woody, very like, I don't know if I'm thinking of like when I clean like a dining room table with wood polish or pledge or something, you get that very, I don't know, this always reminds me of that. Not in a kind of a chemical way, but just that intense kind of polished woodiness. I like maybe a little bit of citrus fruit, maybe some orange there in the middle of the palate. And then yeah, just really consistent throughout. So there's at the end there's like a little bit of peppery heat, maybe some cayenne, maybe some cracked black pepper or like red pepper flakes. Just that kind of that tingly heat, you know, like when you eat something a little bit spicy. So I'm just gonna for giggles go back to the Hancock'S President's Reserve, and that. Now that my palate has become accustomed to the higher proof, that really is subsumed, and it's a very delicate whiskey, and I've lost a lot of the nuance there in having tried the other one. So, what do I think about these? I mean, they're not terrible for $50. They're both a bit one note, and like I said, I think that a combination of all of that would have been better. I mean, these have kind of one thing to say for themselves, which is fine. I mean, they're not bad bourbons. They're, like I said, again, they're like what a better blends might taste like. And there's this awkward note in Blanton's of like, it tastes like fluoride, like when you go to the dentist. I don't get that in either of these. So if I saw one of these on the shelf for $50, would I pick it up? Probably yeah, and not because they're like my favorite whiskeys of all time, but just because there's so much enthusiasm, so much interest in these, and you see them so seldom that I'd be more interested to share them and get them into the hands of people that do like blends or don't like blends, and see what their thoughts are. So hopefully that helps you. But I'm going to have a full write-up of these on malt with, again, that detailed feedback from Buffalo Trace. So have a look at that. But in the meantime, really appreciate you guys hanging out with me for a couple minutes and tasting some whiskey. So to all you out there, cheers.